Speaking of Liverpool fullbacks, then let's talk about Andy Robertson. Let's move on. This story has just come out actually in the last few minutes on your website, Paul, on the Echo. So you spoke to Andy Robertson about a new contract and his situation at Liverpool, and he's confirmed to you guys that there are conversations happening with Liverpool. Is that right?
Yeah, I spoke to Andy Robertson after the Man City game in November, and I asked him about his contract, and he said the talks were yet to get underway, which was slightly puzzling, maybe a bit concerning for a player who, still very important to the team. I think he started in that game as well, and he was in a good little vein of form. He started 3 in a row, I think. But, his talks are now underway. But, speaking to Andy on Monday night, didn't get the sense that a breakthrough is imminent. I asked him, did he want to stay? And he said yes, but he said it was also a difficult one to answer because he needs to see what option is on the table from the club and what options are on the table from elsewhere, and we know that there was interest from Atletico Madrid last summer, and had Diogo Jota not tragically passed away, Andy Robertson's future might have been very different. I think when that happened, he sort of said that there's no way he can leave his colleagues at this time, and he sort of decided to hunker down and lead his colleagues through such a traumatic period, which he and Virgil van Dijk continue to do. But this summer he will be a free agent if something that is agreeable isn't put, across the table of his agents. So it's going to be an interesting one, really. I think he's only started 4 Premier League games, so there is a bit of rotation with Milos Kerkez throughout the season, but it's clear who the number one choice is when it comes to the Premier League. So he'll be 32 in March. He still feels that he's got plenty to give. And, he doesn't feel as though he is on trial now between now and the end of the season. He feels what he has achieved at the club, 2 Premier Leagues, Champions League, Club World Cup, a couple of Carabao Cups and the FA Cup. He feels as though that means that people at the club should know exactly what they're getting from him. And it's probably an idealistic way to look at it from a player's point of view, but we know that Liverpool look at it in terms of what you can contribute rather than what you have contributed when it comes to new contracts. So, it's going to be an interesting one to see which way this goes. But I suppose the big news is that they are at least holding talks about what happens next. And a lot of it, I guess, centres around Robertson's acceptance that he's not going to be playing every week.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you read down the article, and again, go and check it out on the Echo website, but he says, I've played when I've been 50, 40, 30% fit for this club. I've given me all for this club. I always want to play. But he then goes on to say, I haven't played as much this season as I wanted to, but I haven't been surprised by it. He's not an idiot. Like, Liverpool spent a record on a left-back. That left-back was going to get the games. I think Rob will understand that. So I suppose the question is, Paul, I don't know if you've got any hints on this when you spoke to him. Is this Robbo that trying to decide, am I happy being a bit part player? And actually, there's a chance where it might get even less games because Milos Kerkez has been dipped in and out a little bit more, and maybe that changes to him just being first choice, like what Andy Robertson has always been for a while. Or is this maybe dependent on what Liverpool offer him in terms of contract length, money, all that kind of stuff? Because he clearly wants to stay, but also it's not a done deal. This isn't guaranteed it's going to happen. So I wonder which side of where the wiggle room is. Is this more him deciding what he wants, or is this Liverpool deciding actually what we're going to offer him?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I'm not really sure whose court the ball is in at the moment.
Yeah.
Talks are underway, like he confirmed there, but they don't sound as though they're anywhere near the sort of stage that they reached, around about April time with Van Dijk and Salah last year. So, still, 5 months left on the deal. And we know that, like I say there, Van Dijk and Salah didn't sign theirs until April time. And we got told that Trent was leaving around about a similar time, didn't we? So maybe a couple of months yet before we get a bit more of a, concrete resolution either way. But, yeah, I'm not too sure who's got the power at the moment. I think Robertson will know full well that he is now the sort of understudy, but would he back himself to say, well, that's okay, I'm going to play myself back into contention and show you that I'll be number one? Because I think earlier in the season he was still Liverpool's best left back, wasn't he? I just mentioned then when we spoke to him in November, that City game, he played in that, he played in the Real Madrid game, played against Aston Villa, which was a really important win. So he was getting games around that time. Now you look at the big games, Kerkez seems to be favoured, doesn't he, and is improving incrementally. I don't think it's been huge strides like some have suggested with Kerkez, but he is getting better and sort of learning on the job. But I'd love to see Robertson stay around and just sort of continue to ease that handover from legendary left back to 22-year-old who has the potential to be very good. But I guess it's a case of what he and his family want. I'm sure he wants to be playing a lot more. Well, I know he wants to be playing a lot more, but where would he go where he could get those guaranteed minutes? I'm sure there's going to be clubs queuing around the block, but it's whether he feels some of them are better projects than what he's got at Liverpool.
Yeah, Celtic's obvious one. That springs to mind. It's interesting, Paul, because this regime, and you've mentioned there Salah and Virgil and offering them contracts at their age. Andy Robertson's 31 currently, he'll be 32 in March, so that's what age he'll be by the start of next season. With Virgil and Mo, they were playing every week. They were key players in the team, and also, to be fair, like if you look at what's happened with Salah and in terms of like his not his performance level, but like maybe his standing in the manager's plans, he's gone from being nailed on first choice absolutely to, there was a kick-off because he wasn't that anymore. And we've seen this regime in the past. Obviously, it changed when then they've come back now. But Gini Van Alden was allowed to leave, and Roberto Firmino was allowed to leave. All these guys maybe weren't nailed on first choices. The older players who have been given contracts were like in the first team every single game, pretty much. There was apparently a bit of something about Jordan Henderson's contract which made me upset. And when Jurgen Klopp pushed to get that one done. So I'm just thinking from Michael Edwards or Richard Hughes' point of view. Is it an anomaly to offer a 30-year-old effectively? And again, I mean this with the greatest respect to Andy Robertson and everything he's done, but he is effectively a squad player at this moment in time. He isn't Liverpool's first choice left back. Camilo Kerkez is that would be a little bit maybe a shift from what we perceive these guys do. That doesn't seem like a Liverpool Edwards-y type of move, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and he signed his last contract in the summer of 2021, wasn't it? So, that was when Liverpool were just ready to go again after a difficult season behind closed doors, but it was still, you look at that summer and it was him, it was Van Dijk, it was Trent, Alisson, Fabinho, all these big names who signed new contracts. So he will be a high earner, I'm sure, and it's whether the club are happy to continue, paying him those sorts of wages, knowing that he's going to be an FA Cup player, a Carabao Cup player, like you say, a squad player essentially. With Kerkez as fit. So I'm not sure really, knowing that Michael Edwards, the way he works and the sort of data that guides all of the decisions, I wonder whether, it might be in the sort of James Milner realm of new contract, but you take a pay cut. Because we know Liverpool's wage bill is already one of the highest in the game, isn't it? So, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to this one, but he's not the sort of totem of the team in the way Van Dijk and Salah were last year, when the new contracts for players of their age. And that was always the question, wasn't it? Will Liverpool give the contracts to players who were 32 and 33 at the time or whatever it was? And you couldn't really argue against it by the end of it because of how important they were to Liverpool winning the Premier League. Robertson this season, it's not really comparable to Van Dijk and Salah last season. So, like I say, it genuinely could go either way. I'd love to see a resolution where he signs for another year, just to continue that handover process, and then he gets his big send-off at Anfield in the final game of the season or whatever it may be, because I think that would just be a great way to send off a legend.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously Kerkez is so young, he's 22, and I was trying to think, like, if Andy Robertson leaves for nothing, what's Liverpool's left-back plans? Because if they've invested in Milos Kerkez, and it looks like they're going to stick with that, and again, I agree. I think that there's been some improvements. He's not quite where everyone wants him, but he's been okay. Who then do you bring in as a backup? You end up, does Costas come back from loan and he's around for another year, and you kind of do it that way? Because to find a backup for a 22-year-old lad who's going to play, that isn't easy. You're either going a really young kid or you're going an experienced pro, probably. And if you've got an experienced pro who's happy to stay and you can work something out, it's almost like why bother doing anything else?
Yeah.
If you can keep Andy Robertson for a year, you might as well just do that.
Yeah, I don't think Liverpool are going to get a better deputy left-back than Andy Robertson. Certainly without paying a similar fee to what they paid for Kerkez. And then you've got two quality left-backs vying for position, which seems a bit strange. So, yeah, I guess it's better the devil, for Liverpool on this one. And also his importance in the squad. He's the vice-captain. He's one of the leaders, like I mentioned there, on and off the pitch. He's the one who helps instill the dressing room culture, which has been at Liverpool for a number of years. And that has to count for something as much as what he can do on the pitch. So, yeah, I hope it can be resolved. But having spoken to Andy on Monday, Still not sure which side of the coin this is going to land on, if I'm being honest.
No, exactly. And I see from his point of view, he could go and play every single week somewhere. It might not be for Liverpool, but it might be abroad. He's always spoke about in the past, hasn't he? You know, his love and his affinity for Celtic. And, you know, I remember a comment he spoke to Peter Crouch in his podcast randomly. He said, like, obviously I want to finish my career at Liverpool, but if I didn't, then obviously it's going back to Celtic. The team he released him, who he supported, is there for him. So there's an emotional tie to another club as well, which is definitely in play here. But yeah, let us know in the comment section, Andy Robertson, your thoughts on his future. Should he sign? Should Liverpool offer him that contract? And yeah, I'd love to hear all your thoughts on that one. That was a clip from Journo Insight. To check out the whole show, simply download the Redmen Plus app or click the link in the description.